All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started with today's agent development training. I had sent out an email just a little bit ago, and we are actually on module three, which is entitled Understanding the Modern Sales Dynamics and Sandler Selling Tactics for Sales Success. Steve Cavajola is actually going to continue with the modules that he's kind of working through here. We're number three today out of 12, so we've got a lot of, I guess, track out in front of us. But I do think what Cav has to share will be impactful as always. Cav, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you here. I'm here to help and facilitate. You should be able to share. Let me make sure that I can allow you to share host tools, screen share. Okay, you should be good to share now. So thanks again, Cav, for jumping in and doing this. And I'll turn things over to you.
All righty. So what we're going to talk about today again is mastering the buyer-seller dance, and it's really about understanding modern sales dynamics. Sandler was was kind of he really focused on understanding the human dynamics and learning how to process how other people think, what's going on during the sales interaction, and again, it's one of the things that has really helped me over the years. Basically, just understanding what's going on as we're meeting with customers. Because if you don't understand, or if you don't take the time to think about what's going on in this kind of sales interaction, you're probably going to be controlled by the prospect most of the time. Okay, because that's how, unfortunately, how most people in sales are. They're kind of subservient to the prospect. The prospect kind of leads everything, and one of the biggest reasons why is that people just don't understand what's going on when we meet. And so the very first thing that we're going to talk about is what's called the modern buyer's journey, and this was actually written by Dave Matson, who is now the CEO of Sandler, kind of talking about how sales has changed over the last few years, especially since the internet came into play. It's totally changed how people buy, what they're thinking. And if we don't understand what's going on and we're still doing things we used to do 20 years ago, we're gonna kind of miss the boat and we're gonna struggle in sales. So what the journey is, it's just a simple, it's a journey, it's a simple way to understand how people buy today and how salespeople can connect with them. Modern buyers are informed, they're skeptical, and they use digital tools. So sales needs to be helpful, not pushy. So the first stage of when people buy is it's called the awareness stage. And what that is buyers notice they have a problem or a need. So in our world, it may be, they just left a job that had insurance. It's an open enrollment. They're turning 65. And so they know that they have something going on. And so the first thing that most people do now is they research online. They go to Google, they look at social media posts, they look at Google reviews. And so while this is happening, our role is we really can't control this stage much. So what we can do is we can make sure our website and social media presence are easy to find so they can seek you if they need help. So the first thing, guys, I need everyone to understand is that when people have a need, the first place they're going to go is the internet. They're going to do some shopping. They're going to get research, and what ends up happening is that they get so overwhelmed with information that that's when they reach out to a salesperson, not to teach them everything, to help them decipher the information. Okay, see, if you're going in thinking these people need to know about the ACA and gold, silver, they don't need to know that stuff anymore. They already know it. What they need to know is, out of the 60 plans on the ACA marketplace, which one's the right plan for me? With all the Medicare plans out there, what's better for me, a Medicare Advantage or a Medicare supplement? Because they've already done all the research. They've been bombarded by information. And so once they get overwhelmed with the information, they go into what's called the engagement phase. And so what's happening here is buyers start talking about their needs with potential sellers. They're figuring out what they want. And so our job in this stage is to reach out and build trust, ask questions to understand their problems. Our job is not initially to start jamming a presentation down their throat and talk about features and benefits. We want to start having a conversation to kind of see what they've already learned. This is where the fact finder comes into play, um, to learn a lot about what their real needs are. Then we go to the consideration stage. This is where buyers compare solutions, checking if your product fits their needs, budget, and who makes the final call. So this is where we find out about their pain, their budget, and decision to see if they're a good fit. Again, our job is not to pitch too soon. It's to focus on what their needs are and just make a recommendation based on their needs. Or as Silas likes to say, you gotta diagnose before you prescribe. You gotta find out what these people really need, not just come in and just start jamming products down their throat. Then they make their decision. So what they'll do is they'll pick a decision, they'll pick a solution comparing you to competitors and finalizing details. At this point, our job is to answer objections, confirm our solution works for them, and guide them to a confident choice. What we want to do is we want to be an advisor, a trusted advisor, not a hard seller. That's what separates us from most salespeople out there is we're not high pressure sales. We're trusted advisors that, again, as we learn about their needs and make the solutions based on their needs, that's what sets us apart. And then finally, if you can actually do that, they become an advocate or I think there was a book, Silas, you might remember this, where they become a raving fan. Um, and so when we take people through this process where we make solutions based on their needs, we take them through an excellent process. These people become clients for life. They buy from you again. They share you with others. They give you 5-star reviews on Google's. And so, how we do that is we just follow up after the sale to ensure they're satisfied. And what we're ultimately trying to do is build a relationship for future sales or referrals. So, again, we need to understand when we meet with people initially, they're probably already going to be well informed because they did some shopping on the internet. We're getting together, we're learning about their situation, we're helping them decipher all the mess. If we can take them through a good process, they'll trust us, they'll buy from us, and they'll share us with others. So, before I move on, Silas, do you have any comments on this journey?
I don't really. I think this is classic Sandler at its core, and I love that. I see everything that you're doing here has Sandler woven through it. And I think that's really good. And I would encourage you guys, if you haven't dove into Sandler yet, there's a lot of additional research you can do online. There's books you can order, there's videos you can watch. Being a student of Sandler, I think, is one of the things that has helped both Cav and myself, really have success in this business. So it's worth listening in and doing your own due diligence too.
All right. So, now that we understand how people are buying now, we also need to understand what Sandler calls the buyer seller dance. And what this is when a prospect and a salesperson meet, there's a dynamic, and Sandler liked to equate it to a dance. And so with the buyer system, buyers often aim to extract as much information as possible without committing to a purchase. They may feign interest, ask for proposals, delay decisions to maintain control, negotiate better terms, compare competitors, or leverage information against their current suppliers. So when they're doing this, when they meet with us, a lot of times they want us to be unpaid consultants, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Um, but really, they're trying to gather as much information. They're wanting us to do the work for them. And if we don't understand that, we're going to fall for it and we're going to end up wasting a lot of time. So some of the common buyer behaviors includes engaging in small talk to disarm the seller, asking for free consulting or detailed proposals without a commitment, and delaying decisions with phrases like "I need to think it over" to avoid confrontation. And so as these and again these buyers are doing this stuff not because they went to role playing school or they read a book on how to be a buyer. It's just all this stuff, as we're going to find out in a little bit, it's all just defense mechanisms to protect them from us. Okay. Now, what our challenge are is we're driven to close deals. And so we often fall into the trap of chasing unqualified prospects, providing unpaid consulting, or losing control of the process. This leads to wasted time, unreciprocated follow-ups, and proposals that go unanswered. So this is what the dance is. Without a structured approach, the buyer typically leads the interaction while the seller follows, hoping for a sale. The Sandler system aims to reverse this dynamic, positioning the salesperson as a trusted advisor who leads the process while ensuring a win-win outcome. And so, again, as we go through some of this stuff today, the ultimate goal that we want to do is we want to become a trusted advisor where we're actually leading the dance. Okay. We're not going to change what the prospect does, but we can change who leads the dance. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Now, the other thing that Sandler talks about is the games buyers play. Again, as we interact with people, most people, including ourselves, I'm not talking about just our prospects. I'm talking about when we buy stuff and we interact with salespeople, we play games too. And as I go through some of this, some of you guys are going to realize that this has either been done to you or you've done it to other people. And so the first thing Sandler talked about is step number one is they withhold information or they lie. And so individuals are often conditioned throughout their lives to believe that it's acceptable to deceive or mistreat salespeople. As a result, otherwise honest and decent people may feel entitled to speak to or treat sales professionals however they wish, driven by the need for self-preservation. So for those of you who've been in my trainings before, I always like to use this example of how many times have we walked into a store, we know exactly what we want, but we get intercepted by a salesperson and they say, "Can I help you?" And we say, "No, thanks, I'm just looking." Okay, that's a lie. I know what I'm here for. I know what I'm looking for. I just don't want to deal with you as a salesperson at this time. I may need you later, but I don't want you right now. And so that's what a lot of things do. And so as people meet with salespeople, they're going to hold their cards close to the vest. They're not going to come across in most cases with letting you know the full story, because they know that if they appear to be too eager early on as a salesperson, you're going to dig your talons in them and not let them go. And so they just have this defense mechanism where they're going to withhold information. They're not going to tell you the whole story initially because, again, they're just, it's a defense mechanism. That's all it is. Okay. Now, step number two is they get unpaid consulting, or as Sandler calls it, they steal. So, some individuals aim to leverage your knowledge and expertise without compensating you for it. They may feign interest in your products or services until they extract the necessary information. In the insurance industry, it sounds like, "Can you give me a quote?" Okay. In other words, I want you to do the work for me because I just spent all this time on the internet and I'm overwhelmed. So I need you to do the work for me and figure out which plan I want. So can you send me a quote? Okay. Um, and most salespeople will do that regardless. They'll just, yep, hey, that's what a salesperson's supposed to do. They want a quote, I'll give them a quote, and they end up doing the work without any chance of selling anything. Then the third step is they commit to nothing or they lie again. So even after obtaining the information they sought, these individuals may require further assistance, prompting them to deceive you again. So common phrases include, "I need to think this over," or never make a decision without sleeping on it. What they do is they offer just enough encouragement to keep you engaged in case they wish to return to step number two. Because I'll tell you guys, especially in our industry, a lot of people will actually use us to get quotes. And once they get the quotes, they'll go back to their existing agent and say, "Hey, I just met with this health markets person who can do this. Can you beat this?" Okay. Happens all the time with PNC and other types of insurance. But really what they're doing is, again, they're wanting us to do all the work. and they don't want to make a commitment, but they may need you again. And so they give you just enough hope so you'll stick around. And again, that's where they say I need to think it over, or, I never make a decision without sleeping on it. I got to run it by my spouse, my plumber's brothers, aunts, whatever the stupid excuse is. They just give you enough to where you'll stick around. Okay. And then the last thing they do is they disappear, or as Sandler says, they hide. So ultimately, these individuals tend to vanish without a trace, ignoring calls and emails. Once they no longer require services, they're gone. The only person unaware of this conclusion is the salesperson, who is often instructed to persist with follow ups, which can be a significant waste of time. And so you meet with these people this week and they say, "Hey, Silas, this looks great. Um, we need to think it over. Give me a call next week and we'll go from there." And then you call them next week and, you know, these people fall off the grid. They're harder to find than Jimmy Hoffa. They don't return emails, texts. They just disappear. And since they haven't formally told us no, we keep following up. And so one of the things that I always talk about is, if I'm going to get a no, do I want to get it right away or do I want to get it 5 weeks from now? Okay. But that's the games they play. They lie, they steal, they lie, and they hide. Okay. Now, there's not a lot we can do to overcome this, but as long as we understand this is what we're doing, we can at least, again, understand what's going on. Okay. Now, the games that traditional salespeople play, because again, as sales people, we play games as well, at least in the traditional sense. So what traditional salespeople do is their first step is to generate interest. So sales professionals will pose questions aimed at guiding the conversation towards a positive outcome, and each affirmative response reinforces the salesperson's belief that a sales is imminent. So what a lot of traditional salespeople do is they don't really care what the prospect needs. They have a product they want to sell. And so they're going to try and generate interest towards that product. And so they'll ask questions and stuff to kind of generate interest. And then the next thing they'll do is they'll wow with a presentation. So once the salesperson determines that the prospect aligns with the product and service, they'll proceed with the presentation, focusing on features and benefits. In other words, they really don't do a good fact finder. They really don't know if their product is the right solution for them. It's just, I want to sell this product, and this is where I'm going to lead you down. Then step number three, because they didn't take the time to really do a good needs analysis, is they actually have to overcome stalls and objections. And, after delivering the presentation, the salesperson will make an effort to finalize the deal. Some prospects may choose to purchase at this stage if they generally require the offering. However, this is often the moment where objections or hesitations arise, because if you're just selling a product that you think they want and they don't see a real need for it, that's where the objections are going to come in. That's why if you don't do a good job of creating pain, some people are like, "I don't really need that supplemental package," because they don't understand why they need it. Okay. And then finally, step number four is most traditional salespeople chase. If the client opts not to proceed with the purchase, the salesperson is encouraged to follow up with the prospect until a definitive no is received. And this is where many salespeople invest their time pursuing a no. Okay. So you got the games that buyers play. You got the games that traditional salespeople play. And so Sandler said this is what happens when these systems collide. So the first thing is the salesperson's trying to generate interest instead of finding out what the real needs are. The prospects need the information, so they're going to withhold information and kind of play along. The salesperson wows with a presentation. The client gets the unpaid consulting they were looking for. They overcome stalls and objections. The prospect commits to nothing. The salesperson chase, the prospect disappears, and what ultimately happens is we have a frustrated salesperson and an educated prospect that probably bought from somebody else. Okay. Now, here's the challenges with this buyer-seller dance. Number one, typically the prospect leads the interaction, dictating the next steps as they regard salespeople as subordinates. In other words, you need my business, so you're going to do what I tell you to do. And most salespeople, because they're desperate for the sales, they will do what the prospect tells them to do. The salesperson invests excessive time in pursuing a no. In other words, we're instead of going and finding new people that are going to say yes, they're spending a bunch of time with people that are never going to buy with them anyway. And the biggest problem with this is the salesperson makes just enough sales to remain trapped in this ongoing cycle indefinitely. And so that's kind of the game that's going on in the sales world. And that's why in traditional sales, there's the good months and bad months, the feasts and the famine. It's because this system, the buyer's games, the salesperson's games, it's just kind of a dead end street that's just going to be very frustrating in the long run because you end up spending a lot of time chasing people who are not going to buy from you. You're kind of at the mercy of what the prospect wants you to do, and that's not a way to have a successful career. So before I move into some selling tactics, Silas, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't. I don't really. I think you said it well.
Okay. Has anyone lived this by a show of hands? I did before I learned Sandler. This was me when I first got started, and I was a struggling salesperson, and just like people could pull me around like a puppy on a leash because I was so desperate for a sale. And I just ended up once I was introduced to this, and I had to make that tough decision that, you know what? If I'm going to get a no, I want to get it right away. And if they can't make the decision, I'll make the decision for them. No.
I think to be able to effectively execute these strategies, though, you also have to have a pretty good volume of leads flowing into your funnel, right? It becomes way more difficult to execute these strategies if you've only got a couple of people that you may potentially have a chance with this week. And so I think a lot of this business goes back to actively marketing. I think about the things on the performance tracker spreadsheet, what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. How many people are you going to get your information to? How many leads do you have coming in? How many outbound dials are you going to be making? Like if you can build a funnel and a pipeline of new incoming leads, whether you're taking them from health markets, you're developing them yourself, or you've got referrals flowing in. Those are kind of the three channels. If you can have robust inflow from all three of those channels, all of these techniques become way simpler to execute because you got plenty of people to talk to, right? I see way too many new people chasing a couple of clients because they think there's a deal there and they don't want to let it go. And now you're no longer in control. The consumer's in control, as Steve has talked about. So lead gen and marketing is the lifeblood of this business, and you have to do that if you're going to be able to execute these different tactics well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Silas, because that reminded me of a sermon that I heard one time where he was talking about, if you have a couple M&Ms and M's and you have a couple of kids, they're going to fight over the M&Ms because it's a scarcity mindset. There's only a few, but if you open up your trunk and it's filled with M&Ms, all of a sudden you're like, we don't need to fight over the two. We got plenty. And that's where you need to get with in this business is you need to have plenty of people to talk to. So you're not spending all your time with the few people that actually are willing to talk to you. And if you don't have that, you've got to go create it. It's not going to come to you unless you, again, spend a bunch of money on live transfers, spend a bunch of money on internet leads. Um, and so that's why putting this all together and just understanding this process, it's going to help you break that cycle to where, like I says, you don't have to chase certain people because you have other people to talk to. Okay. So let's talk about some Sandler selling tactics. And these are the things that have allowed me to lead the dance. Now, before we get into the tactics, we need to understand what determines who leads the dance because when you can understand this, this will change it. This was the game changer for me. Okay. So the party with the greatest need does not lead the dance. That's the secret. So when the potential client requires your products or services more than the salesperson requires the sale, the salesperson maintains control. If the salesperson requires the sale more than the client needs your products or service, then the potential client holds all the power. Again, if they can sense they're the next mortgage payment for you, they're gonna put the brakes on because they think you're just telling them what they want to hear. When they get the sense that you could care less if you make the sale or not, here's the solution, take it or leave it. They want to do business with you because they can sense you're trying to help them. And so the very first thing I had to learn how to do is fake it till you make it. And that's a hard thing to do when you're struggling financially or you're struggling and you need to make the sale. It is so hard to walk away from something. But guys, when I made the decision to walk away from things that I didn't think was going anywhere, that's what increased my income the quickest because I quit spending time with people who were not going to buy and I started focusing my time on people who were, but I had to go find them. But once I found them and once I started doing the things to find them and then learning to create the pain to where, I don't care if you buy with me or buy from me or not, you're the one with the problem, not me. Okay. So here's the secret to leading the dance. You got to guide your prospects to confront their pain. People make purchases based on emotions, but their decisions are made through intellectual reasoning. The most profound emotion they encounter is pain. If a prospect does not feel pain, making a sale will be challenging. Individuals are likely to continue their current habits until the discomfort of remaining in their existing situation outweighs the discomfort of adopting something new. If you fail to help your prospects realize their pain, they will dictate the terms of the interaction and continue to make decisions based on price alone. So again, if you want to start leading the dance, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to learn how to create pain. Okay? So, as sales professionals, we need to shift our focus from merely selling a product to addressing the prospect's pain. It's essential to assist them in identifying their pain as they might not even be aware of its existence. And once the pain point is acknowledged, we must allow the prospect to determine how they wish to address the situation. So, the thing that changed my world is understanding that whoever had the greatest need was not in control. And if I could just learn to find their pain, people will make decisions. Again, and one of the things, and Silas, you'll remember, there was a rep that used to be with us named Grant Bourne who did this at a show where he talked about, he came out on stage with a garbage bucket with some, and he asked anyone in the audience if they would buy this garbage bucket off him for $100. And they looked and said no. He said, but what if you were on fire and this was filled with water? Would you buy it now? And everyone said yeah, because again, it's the different, nothing, the circumstances didn't change other than the people realized they were in pain and now that seemed like a good deal to buy. So if you're having a hard time closing people, probably the biggest reason why is you haven't created enough pain for them to make a decision right now. Because if you create pain, they're not going to tell you they need to think it over. Because again, if you're on fire and I got this bucket of water, go ahead, think it over. I'll wait. I got time. Go sleep on it. Go talk to your brother's plumber, whatever. I am not the one on fire right now. And once I learned how to create pain, it changed everything. Because then it just becomes, yes, I'm going to buy what you offered, or Steve, I understand what you're saying, but I can't afford it. I get very few, I don't really need that stuff. Okay. Because I'm very good at creating pain. So let's talk about some tactics to control the dance. I'm going to talk about some other ones. We're going to end up with the pain funnel. But the first one is a pattern interrupt. So again, a pattern interrupt in the Sandler sales is a technique used to disrupt a prospect's usual thought patterns or behaviors during a sales interaction, making them more receptive to the salesperson's message. By breaking the expected flow of typical sales conversation, it helps the salespeople stand out, build trust, and guide prospects to a more meaningful dialogue. So again, the very first thing we want to do when we do a pattern interrupt is this disrupts the prospect's autopilot response. So prospects often have pre-programmed responses to salespeople, such as "I'm not interested, send me some information," which can derail the conversation before it begins. And so a pattern interrupt, like an unexpected question, jolts them out of their automatic defenses. And so this creates the opportunity to engage the prospect in a genuine conversation rather than triggering their usual objection. So going back to the thing we talked about earlier, when a salesperson intercepts you, and instead of saying, can I help you? Where we already have the auto responses of no thanks, I'm just looking. What if that person would turn around and say, hi, is this your first time here? No. Well, we love repeat customers. Hey, if you need me, I'll be over there. That's a different way to do it's a pattern interrupt. Or, one of the things I do when I'm calling leads on the phone and I ask, this no, I recently got this number. Is this a mistake? Or are you looking for help? The is this a mistake is the pattern interrupt. Instead of assuming they want it, I'm asking them if they want a mistake. And so it just kind of jots them out of this autopilot response. Now, it also differentiates the salesperson. So most salespeople follow a traditional script, pitching features and benefits right away, which can feel generic or aggressive. And the pattern interrupt sets the salesperson apart as someone who thinks differently. And so the benefit is it makes the salesperson memorable and positions them as a problem solver, increasing the likelihood of advancing the sale. So, and then finally, it reduces sales pressure. Sales methodology avoids high pressure tactics, focusing instead on mutual fit and qualification. The pattern interrupt often involves disarming statements that lower the prospect's resistance. And this creates a relaxed environment where the prospects feel safe to share their challenges, enabling better discovery and qualification. Even something as crazy as walking into a business and say, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for a little help. That's a pattern interrupt, guys. Because when you walk into a business, what are they trained to say to people, to a customer? Can I help you? So if you walk in and say, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for a little help, that actually is a pattern interrupt that gets them to engage instead of them coming, hi, I'm Steve Cavajol with Health Markets. I'm just seeing if you're happy with your, I'm not interested, you know? So again, learning pattern interrupts. I mean, the whole Sandler system is a huge pattern interrupt because it's so drastically different than traditional sales. Even though it's been around for 30 years, it's still a lot different. Actually, it's been around longer than 30 years because I've been doing this almost 30 years. So it's a lot longer than that. But learning pattern interrupts, again, the biggest thing it's going to do is it's going to disrupt that autopilot response. That's the biggest thing this can do for you. Now, another thing you can do is what's called qualifying out. So this refers to the process of intentionally determining that a prospect is not a good fit for your product or service and choosing to disengage from the sales process with them. It's about identifying early on whether a prospect has the potential to become a customer based on their needs, budget, and decision-making authority and alignment with your offering. Instead of chasing every lead or trying to force a sale, the Sandler approach emphasizes focusing on high potential prospects to maximize efficiency or effectiveness. So when should you qualify out? The prospect has no clear pain or need your solution can address. They lack the budget or willingness to invest, and the prospect's expectations are misaligned with what you can deliver. Again, I just had someone yesterday. It was an internet lead, and we were texting back and forth. And basically, they want free insurance. I'm done. It doesn't exist. Call the state of Indiana, see if you can get hit. That's about as free as you can get. But again, I'm not gonna try and figure out someone who doesn't have a budget. I'm not gonna try and figure out how I can help someone who doesn't have a need that my solution can solve. Okay, and you can find that out very, very quickly. And the benefits of qualifying out is it frees up time to focus on qualifying leads. It provides better relationships. Prospects appreciate the honesty and lack of pressure, which can lead to referrals or future opportunities. And by focusing on well-qualified prospects, you increase the likelihood of successful deals. So that's qualifying out. I want to find out very early on, whether or not I can help you. Okay. Upfront contracts. In the Sandler sales system, the upfront contract is a mutual agreement established between the salesperson and the prospect as the start of the sales interaction or a specific stage of the sales process. It sets clear expectations for the conversation, ensuring both parties are aligned on the purpose, agenda, time, and potential outcomes. The goal is to create transparency, reduce pressure, and build trust by avoiding surprises and misunderstandings. And so, why an upfront contract works? Number one, it builds trust. By being transparent about intentions and outcomes, it reduces the prospect's defensiveness. It sets boundaries. It respects prospects' time and clarifies expectations, making the interaction feel collaborative. It avoids misunderstandings. Both parties know what to expect, reducing the chance of objections or awkwardness later. And it empowers the salesperson. It gives the salesperson control over the process while keeping the prospect comfortable. Again, one of the things I do when I'm setting an appointment is I ask, would you be opposed to getting together for about 30 to 45 minutes to explore your options? Because if you don't set that upfront contract and you get there and they've got 10 minutes before they got to go pick their kid up from soccer practice, whose fault is that? You got to ask them, hey, when would you have time to we could block out 30 to 45 minutes to go over this? But if you just say, hey, when can I stop by? And you don't put a parameter, it's your fault. If you're having someone come in for ACA and they don't come in with their income and the social security numbers of their family, that's your fault because you didn't set the contract and let them know what they were supposed to have available. So again, by setting upfront contracts, another upfront contract is if someone says, I need to think it over, okay, how long do you need to think it over? Well, give me a few days. Okay, I'm going to call you at this day. I'm going to call you at that time and then tell me yes, and we'll figure out where to go from there. Or if I hear anything other than a yes, I'm going to take it as a no. That is an upfront contract. It's every time I talk to someone, I need to set a contract for what's going to happen next that we can mutually agree on. Okay. And again, a lot of the stuff I'm going over with now, guys, when we actually get into the techniques, I'll be pointing this stuff out that this is an upfront contract. This is a pattern interrupt. This is qualifying out. Another one is negative reverse selling. So on negative reverse selling, this is a psychological technique designed to disarm prospects, uncover their true objections, and qualify them more effectively by subtly challenging their interest or commitment. Instead of pushing for a sale or chasing a prospect, the salesperson takes a step back, gently questioning whether the prospect is generally interested or if the solution's a good fit. This approach flips traditional sales tactics, leveraging reverse psychology to encourage prospects to convince themselves to move forward. In other words, if I've got someone who's kind of hem-hawing around and doesn't make a decision, you know, a negative reverse would be, you know what, Silas, it kind of sounds like this isn't that important to you. Should we just be done? And Silas is either going to say, yes, we should be done, or he's going to say, well, no, I am interested. And he'll start fighting for it. Okay. So how a negative reverse selling works is the salesperson responds to a prospect's hesitation, objection, or vague response with a statement that implies doubt about the prospect's readiness or fit, prompting the prospect to clarify or defend their position. It's non-aggressive and conversational. It's designed to keep the prospect comfortable while revealing their true motivations or concerns. And guys, ultimately, the goal is to avoid wasting time on unqualified prospects to deepen engagement with those who are serious. Okay, that's all I want to do. I just want to find out if this is important to you or not. Okay. So why it works. Number one, the psychological effect. People naturally want what seems less attainable. By suggesting the solution might not be for them, prospects often feel compelled to prove their interest. It qualifies prospects. This quickly separates the tire kickers from serious buyers, saving time. It reduces pressure. It aligns with Sandler's low pressure consultative approach, making salespeople appear as a trusted advisor rather than a pushy seller. And it does reveal pain points. It encourages prospects to articulate their needs or objections, giving the prospect valuable information to address real concerns. So again, negative reverse selling. We'll see how we do that as we go through some of the tactics later in these modules.
Yeah,
And then, yeah.
before you move on there, um, going back to negative reverse selling, I always think about that as the pendulum effect too, and I think Sandler refers to that a little bit.
Mhm.
Sometimes pushing people away makes them come back and want it that much more, or pulling something away from people makes them chase it a little bit, right? And so these are tactics and techniques that can be used to just create a little bit more desire and I guess intent by the client as far as chasing what they need. And I do think we all have that. That's just human nature. When something's pulled away, sometimes you want it more, right? So understanding the psychology, and I think this is one of the reasons why Cav is such a great teacher of this content, is because he has that background and that training and that experience in psychology. And this is truly leveraging psychology. I think
Mhm.
most people, it's not every single person, but most people respond in certain ways to these types of techniques and tactics. And I don't think you want to look at this as manipulating things, but it's helping guide people down the path that they need to go down with the least amount of resistance for both them and you, right? And so it just makes it easier to get people to go where you would like them to go, and in many situations, probably where they need to go. And so kind of think about it as greasing the wheels a little bit. It's certainly not a tactic to be sneaky or shady in any way, but it is, once you understand the psychology behind it, you can really guide conversations and situations in ways that you couldn't before you understood some of this stuff. So those are just
Yeah,
optics and ways to think about it.
yeah, and the other thing too is as you do this, you may find that they really aren't interested, and that's okay. We're not going to be all things to all people, and if we don't have what they need, why am I going to try and jam a square peg in a round hole? They either want my solution or they don't. It's going to help more, it's not, but I don't have to waste a lot of time finding it out because again, it's nothing personal. I'd rather have them go get what they want, and if I can't provide it, that's okay. Okay. So that's where the negative reverse selling, all it does is it really just pulls out, are you just again, lie, steal, lie, and hide? Are you just pumping me to be an unpaid consultant? Or are you truly serious about what I can do to help you? And I just need to find out quicker. And if they don't want my help, that's okay because I have other people I can go talk to. When I don't have other people to talk to, going back to what Silas said earlier, I'm going to stick around to these people as long as I can because it's the only person I got. And then I'm going to become a stalker. And again, it's desperation. So, all right, pain funnel. This is a sales questioning technique developed by Sandler to uncover prospects' pain points, challenges, or needs in a structured and empathetic way. It's part of the Sandler selling system, which emphasizes building trust and guiding prospects to self discover the problems rather than pushing a product or service. Again, guys, when I meet with people, I'm never selling a product. I'm helping them figure out what their needs are. And then if once we understand what their pain points are, I show them products that can fill the need. And so the key principles of this, it's prospect led discovery. The pain funnel is not about pitching, it's about letting prospects reveal their needs through guided questioning. It's empathy and active listening. They must listen carefully and show genuine interest in the prospect's challenges. And it's a qualifying. By uncovering pain, the salesperson can determine if a prospect has a compelling reason to buy and if they're a good fit for the solution. Okay. So why it works? Again, the pain funnel lies with Sandler's philosophy that people buy to solve pain or achieve gain. By focusing on pain, the salesperson helps the prospect justify the need for change, increasing the likelihood of a sale while building a relationship based on trust and understanding. And the stages of the pain funnel include the following. So, again, we're going to talk about this in more detail down the road. But what we got to do is when we meet with people, we need to understand most people think they're well. I don't have any issues. All I need is health insurance or all I need is Medicare. We've got to take those people to sick. Once they see they're sick, they recognize this could be a concern for others. It might not be a concern for me, but I could see where it would be a problem for someone else. Once we make them sick, we then make them critical, where now they realize they have a problem and they need help. And then finally, once we know they're critical, we perform the miracle where I have a solution for this issue. So again, this is the thing that changed my world back when I was introduced to Sandler back in 1998 was I learned how to do the pain funnel. And I think I mentioned last week where I went out and I hit 10 in a row after doing this. Um, and it's just been part of my repertoire ever since of just being able to take people through these steps to uncover the true need. Okay. So we're going to learn about this a little bit more in detail down the road. But again, that's the pain funnel, which to me is out of all the tactics, if you're going to learn any of them, this is the first one to learn because this will drastically increase your ability to sell subs in life by creating pain. So, positive results. So again, it improves sales efficiency. You focus on qualified leads. By emphasizing early qualification and qualifying out unfit prospects, salespeople waste less time on low probability deals. There's shorter sales cycles because if you use upfront contracts and all this kind of stuff, it just eliminates a lot of the the things we waste time on. It enhances the salesperson's confidence and control. Again, I love the fact that this is a non-pushy approach. It's low pressure, it's consultative style, empowers salespeople to act as trusted advisors rather than aggressive closers, boosting their confidence in handling objections. And it does allow you to control the process. Again, things like upfront contracts and other tools allows you to set the tone and direction of the conversation, reducing the feeling of being at the mercy of the prospects. Stronger client relationships. There's trust and transparency. Sandler's system emphasizes on mutual respect through tools like upfront contracts, fosters trust by aligning expectations and avoiding surprises. It creates long-term partnerships, which is ultimately what we're trying to do here, guys. We're trying to create clients for life because we have residual income. And so by solving real pain points and qualifying out poor fits, salespeople build relationships based on value, leading to repeat business and referrals. And then finally, the psychological and emotional benefits for the salesperson. Again, if you remember from the buyer seller dance, if you do the traditional way, you're usually frustrated. When you learn to embrace this, it will reduce your stress because by qualifying out poor fits and affording high pressure tactics, salespeople experience less rejection and frustration. And it gives you an empowered mindset because, again, Sandler's philosophy of an equal business stature boosts salesperson's self-esteem and professionalism. Thing I like about Sandler is, again, I am not a subordinate to my customers. I'm a business equal because the way you become a business equal is we both have the same outcome in mind. I want to help protect your income. I mean, that's ultimately what we do. I don't care if you're a multimillionaire. We both want to protect your income. That's what makes us big business equals. Okay. Now, I just recently saw some stuff from Sandler. I saw a YouTube thing the other day that I'm going to incorporate, and I think I can do it in the next 6 minutes. But it was called Why Salespeople Lose Deals, the 5 biggest reasons salespeople lose deals. Number one, poor qualification, chasing unqualified or low priority clients. Again, the reason this is happening is they're skipping or rushing through the fact finding phase, and sales reps often jump to offering solutions too soon before fully qualifying the opportunity. Without uncovering real pain, deals are likely to stall or never close. So, again, we've mentioned that a lot of times. We're spending way too much time with people we shouldn't be spending time with. So, we got to learn to do a good fact finder. We got to learn to uh, diagnose before we prescribe. And if we're not a good fit, move on. It's okay. The second thing is price focus over value. So what happens here is you're leading with products or service instead of linking to pain. If the focus is only on price, prospects see you as a commodity. Shift the conversation to value to position yourself as a trusted partner, not just a vendor. Again, when you learn to create pain, it's not about price anymore. When there's pain, people will spend more money than they wanted to solve the pain. But if you just sell on price, you're going to be replaced on price. It's that simple. And they don't look at you as a trusted advisor. Again, you're just a commodity. It's transactional, it's not relational. Okay. Not reaching the true decision makers. Accepting meetings with influencers instead of business owner or just meeting with one spouse. Okay. Now, I know sometimes that happens, but deals stall when you're talking with someone who can't say yes. To win consistently, you must learn to position yourself to get in front of other people who can say yes. Now, I will tell you there are times where we just meet with not the decision maker, or we just meet with one spouse. But again, we can set an upfront contract to get in front of both instead of having the spouse go talk to his wife or the wife go talk to no, let's set another appointment. Okay, those are things we need to learn how to do because, again, if you're just not dealing with the true decision makers and don't know how to get in front of both of them at the same time or that person, it's going to be very difficult. Weak follow up and lack of clear next steps. In other words, there's no strong upfront contract or agreed upon follow up plan. Without clear next steps, deals stall and fade away. To keep momentum, confirm actions and timelines before leaving the meeting. Again, you should always know what's going to happen next. And when they say call me next week, it's not okay. It's when, what time. You set another appointment. Okay. And if they're not willing to do that, walk away because they're not serious. Okay. But that's what happens is, again, we have weak follow-ups. We don't know what's next. And so we end up, people fall through the cracks. And this is probably the most important one, not differentiating full value. What you're doing is you're failing to leverage your total offering. Guys, they don't need you for ACA plans. They don't need you for Medicare. They need you for all the stuff that ACA and Medicare doesn't cover. And if you're not showing the whole package, or if you, in the P4L, we've got the 3 component solutions, health, subs, and life. If you're not explaining that to people and showing how it's all connected, you're not showing the full value. And if prospects don't see what makes you unique, they'll choose based on price or they'll stick with the status quo. To stand out, link your value to their pain and highlight outcomes only you can deliver. Silas and I, we've talked about this before, but there's been many times where we've had a customer say, man, no one's ever talked to us like this before. No one's ever showed us this stuff before. Okay. And that really helps. So as we wrap up, like Silas says, there are resources. There's a couple of books that you can get on Amazon. The one I would recommend first, if you're interested in Sandler, is You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, but make sure you get the second edition because that's a little bit more updated. David Sandler wrote this, but David Matson added some stuff in there. And then get David Matson's book, How to Sell to the Modern Buyer. That's a great follow-up to the foundational principles of You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. And I even asked this question when we were talking to Eric Meyer, our Sandler trainer, which book's more important? He said, I'm old school. You got to read the Can't Teach a Ride Bike at a Seminar first to get the foundation, and then you read the Modern Buyer to enhance your skills. So that's what I got.
Great stuff, Cab. I would just encourage all of you. We're bringing this content to you free of charge to you. There are salespeople out there right now who are spending 12, 15, 18, $20,000 a year to tap into the same content that Steve's delivering for you. And so I hope you find value in this. I would also tell you a lot of this stuff, if you don't start studying it and implementing it and using it, it's just going to fade away. And it was a waste of your time to be here today or to be on these sessions. So you got to start becoming a student of your business. I think starting with reading those 2 books would be a great place to start. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there. Really just start thinking through how can you weave some of these techniques and tactics into your sales process. And Cav's got them both right there. So yeah,
They're always within arm's reach.
you got to be a student of your business. I mean, this is professional coaching. And so it involves obviously teaching the material, but now you've got to take it and go implement it and begin using it and figuring out how can I do this? I think some of those last 5 or 6 points that you made, Cav, were just so succinct and dead on. We'll make this video available so you guys can kind of recap this because I do think there was a lot here, and Steve does move quickly, which I appreciate. We don't want to linger too long on any one point, but at the same time, I think you guys should go back through this and listen to this again and tap into some of these resources. I'll tell you, Sandler has made all the difference in my selling career. 25 years now I've been doing this, and a big piece of it is Sandler. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I've got one more thing that I just want to talk about before we wrap things up for today, but it doesn't need to be on the recording. So.